us in our invocation.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day, and thank you for the blessing that you give us. And thank you for letting us come together, Father, and please help us control of this meeting so that your will is what we do tonight, Father. And I pray that you'll watch over each one of our citizens and the people outside and all of our first responders. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll let you guys be looking at the agenda. Got a pretty busy agenda tonight. While you're doing that, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Lilly. Here. Myself. Here. Weston. King.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Merriman.
Here. And we have a quorum, so I'll take a few more seconds to look over the agenda. We've got a public hearing, some ordinances, a couple of resolutions, and a couple other things that we're going to be talking about. So we'll get right on into it. And as usual, we always start with the consent agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Council members have a copy of the minutes and have had an opportunity to review those, or are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay, if not, let the record show the minutes are approved as written. And we'll start with our department reports. Chief?
Okay, so everything's going well at the police department. Still have one on the job injury, which actually got cleared up today. He's been released to come back to full service, I believe starting tomorrow, so I need to change that. Still have one opening. We've interviewed some folks, got a couple that we're going to do the PT test and things like that, see if we can't kind of get the ball rolling on that. Besides that, everything else is fine. On issues and concerns, I've got some complaints about dogs roaming free and over in the Magnolia Meadows community and around that area. And we just want to remind everybody that even though the city of Columbia itself does not have a leash law, we do follow the state law. And you have to keep your dogs under control. You have to keep them in your yard or on a leash. If your dog gets out and gets into trouble, you're probably going to be held liable. Okay, so we remind everybody, please keep up with your fur dogs. Okay. The only other thing is Liberty Day road closures. So we're having signs placed at 47 South and Pitts, digital signs, 25 at Main, and then West College at 25, or actually it's going to be on the 70 side, reminding everybody of the day of Liberty Day, and there's going to be street closures to try and use alternate routes. We'll have police cars parked on streets that are blocked. If you go around the police cars or come through the barricades one way or another, and we see it, it happens, you're going to receive a citation. Last year, with the traffic and things we had going on, it was dangerous. People just driving around the barricades and kind of doing what they wanted to do, and we're not going to have that this year. So, let's see, police officers positions open. Cops and Cookies starts at the Columbia Library on July the 9th, the 23rd, and 30th. So if you want some cookies and come out and read a story to the kids, come join us. We're going to have a good time. That's about it.
Okay. Any questions for the chief? All right, thanks. Admin.
Everything is going good at City Hall. Municipal election is August 26th. Qualifying is still going on. That started on June 10th and ends on the 24th. Come to City Hall if you would like to qualify. The bottom section down there is our budget for through May. The top section is general fund, and the bottom section is all other funds. And everything's looking good.
Questions for the clerk? Okay. Court.
Well, let's see. I'm looking at this as you're looking at it because Terry did it and didn't send it to me before I left.
We know you're good.
I left my office a little early today. Only thing, had a good court last Tuesday, and disposed of a lot of cases, still had probably, 50% of the folks were not there, but anyway, we're taking care of that. The ordinance, we've had an ongoing problem, and it's been around a long time. This is not something that is new. We've just not been able to particularly deal with it until we've had a couple of officers get certified in this motor carrier regulation. And we do have, one certified now, one anyway. So they can do inspections on big trucks. We've never had to deal with that before in our court because we didn't have jurisdiction to deal with it. Now we do, and one officer in particular has brought me the entire federal regulation on motor carrier for large trucks.
It's in these charts too.
Right. And it's about that thick, okay? And so what we've run into in the past, just a bit of an update, is that the officer stops somebody, has a commercial driver's license. We try to be kind because commercial driver's license, somebody can lose their livelihood if they even get one ticket with a commercial driver's license. So we try to work around that. And the feds have picked up on that because it's a problem nationwide. And they've actually put out a memo about they call it masking. They don't want the courts at any level, circuit, district, municipal, to mask a ticket, hide, dismiss improperly, change from one charge to another, a ticket that would affect a CDL carrier, either to cause them to lose their CDL or cause them to be penalized with their CDL, which can sometimes be quite harmful to somebody if that's the way they make their living. And so now we're kind of under the gun to if they write a ticket for somebody with a CDL, that ticket is going to go straight through, end of no discussion. The prosecutors are aware of it and that sort of thing. So what you have in front of you tonight is an ordinance to simply adopt the federal regulation and make it a city ordinance, which would mean that we could write citations and inspection and that sort of thing under a city ordinance, as well as being certified to do it from state level. And that's really all that is. And we will just have to deal with the fact that sometimes it works a hardship, but sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's just a hardship. Somebody has a CDL, they got a ticket, they just got to deal with that. Because the feds are kind of looking at everybody because they've had a tremendous upturn on large truck accidents and that sort of thing. And so, other than that, everything is rolling along. Driving school is doing really well. I signed 4 yesterday, certificates of completion, where if you complete the driving school, we dismiss the ticket. We make about the same amount of money, maybe $1 or $2 more if they do driving school than with the ticket. And so that works pretty well, particularly with young folks. Numbers are kind of back up a little bit. I think the people not showing up is just a societal issue, but everything's rolling along fairly well. Like I say, we had a good court last Tuesday, and Terry has made some inroads to some people that are helping us with our folks that we do not have the facilities or the resources to deal with that have in some cases, some fairly severe mental issues. This court is just not designed to deal with those sort of folks and was never really intended to, but they kind of fall in our lap sometimes. The cops have to deal with them and we have to deal with them. But other than that, everything's okay.
Okay. Any questions for the judge? All right, thank you, sir.
No questions. I like no questions.
Public Works.
Everything's going pretty good in Public Works right now. We're waiting on the electrical contractor to get us a contract here. He's letting the engineer go over his stuff, make sure everything's the way he wants it and stuff. He's gonna send it to Charlene for y'all to look at, and everything when we get it. Did hire, I didn't put it on, forgot to put it on there, did hire another CDL driver and stuff. He's gonna start in 2 weeks. He turned his notice in yesterday and stuff, and I did hire one young boy for summertime help. He started Monday to help us cut grass and stuff, so we're trying to get a full crew and stuff, but other than that, we're just staying busy keeping grass cut and brush picked up and keeping the garbage picked up. And anybody, well, and Thursday's route will be picked up Wednesday. We put it on the website and I called some people out there to, you got to put it on their community website in the subdivision and stuff.
Thank you for reminding me, or mine would be on the street there. Any questions for Alan? Okay, thank you, sir. All right, board reports. I don't know if we have a report from the planning commission, or do we just want to talk about the,
We didn't have
Vacancies.
anything on our agenda, so we just approved minutes.
okay. The only
The
thing,
library did meet
okay,
today at 4:30 and everything's on the agenda, so.
all right, well, that's good news.
Yep.
And you're gonna be serving lots of cookies this summer too.
Oh, and one more thing, she will have a booth on Liberty Day, and it's gonna be in between, the leaders and Amazing Flowers. And she
Okay.
will be giving out handouts and magnets.
Perfect, great. So on the planning commission, going back to that, we've got some vacancies that are gonna be coming up. One of them is Johnny Pageant, and I think that he would like to be reappointed, so we'll have an opportunity to consider that. Amy Dixon has decided to resign. I don't know if she's actually submitted it or has actually just notified us that she's going to, but we're gonna need to replace Amy. We just renewed her term, so whoever we bring on board to replace Amy, and she'll be a big loss because she was one of the really big contributors to the planning commission. But anyway, what I'd like to do is just let everybody know, people who be listening to the live stream or watching the video, and those who are out here, the council, if you have recommendations of candidates that we would want to consider to replace Amy, put those on there. Do we have any other near-term vacancies to fill? So probably reappoint Johnny and look for someone to replace Amy. I've heard of one name who's interested, and so if anybody knows anybody else, we can take that up at the next meeting. Anything else? Any other boards? Questions? Thank you. All right, so we're gonna have to suspend this meeting and go into a public hearing. So let me read this menu, or this script, if you will. So proper notice of this regularly scheduled council meeting of the City of Columbiana was given in advance of this public meeting, and the notice remained posted through this scheduling. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to suspend the regularly scheduled council meeting in order to have a public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay? It requires a unanimous vote, so I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Lilly,
Yes.
Gonzalez, King,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Renner.
Yes. Okay, so the council meeting is suspended, and I'm going to call to order the public hearing to hear from anyone speaking for or against the rezoning of tax parcel 21100000001.002, and pretty much the same thing, except it's .00. No, it's not. It's different. It's 21230000001.000. And it's going to be rezoning from no zoning to A1, and the property's on Highway 47. So I need to talk a little bit about this before we do it. So, so this is the area. There's two things that we're going to be talking about subsequently. Right now, we're going to deal with the rezoning and pre-zoning, but we're going to be subsequently considering an annexation of this property right here. All of this cross-hashed property is new development, and what's the name of that development again? Here somewhere.
Is the name, do we know the name of the development yet? Okay.
Well, so
It's just
Gallant Lake is
is the owner.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, but there's a little bit of an oddity here. So all this purple stuff theoretically is the city of Columbiana, and all that magenta, purple, whatever color that is supposedly already zoned A1. But this is, the GIS is not accurate. And over here is a screenshot of our zoning map, which is what's official and been adopted by the ordinance. So the A1 stuff is what's in green here. So there's this little area that's already in the city limits of Columbiana that is not zoned. And that would be on this map, that would be basically this area that I'm outlining right here, okay? So we require that all of our property inside the city limits be zoned. There are a smattering of parcels out there that are not zoned. And the planning commission has been working on getting all those rezoned. And so actually, it was a split zoning situation where part of it was not zoned, as you can see, and then up here, this part of it was zoned. So anyway, that's what we're gonna be considering, is rezoning this from no zoning to A1, and then pre-zoning everything that's out here that is part of the property to be annexed to A1. So, because we obviously can't zone it until it's actually in the city limits, so we pre-zone it until the annexation occurs. Any questions about that from the council before I move on to the public hearing part of it? Okay. So, going back to my script here. So I want to remind the council member that the public hearing is not the time for debate. It's a time to hear for those speaking for or against this zoning and pre-zoning request. And then once we reconvene the council meeting, we'll have an opportunity for discussion. So at this time, I'd like to ask, is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of this zoning and rezoning and pre-zoning request?
My name's Connor Farmer, I'm the owner of Gallant Lake
Mm-hmm.
and High Point Properties. And we bought the property about 6 months ago, I believe. And we're looking to do a development with 10-acre lots of private road development. We've done several of these around the county over the years. Probably one that you guys might be familiar with is right up the road from this, called Chelsea Farms, where we've got gated entrances, and the roads inside are private. And all the lots range between like 5 to 100 acres. That one's about 800 or 900 acres right there. We did that, finished that 3 or 4 years ago. Years ago, we did one Red Oak Farms up in Chelsea, but we've done several of those around the county over the year, where we just build a private road. We set up covenants and restrictions where the homeowners are responsible for the roads and maintenance of the roads, so the city doesn't have any liability with the roads. We'd be running the water line through it and meeting the fire code, to where each house would have public water and fire coverage. I've got a layout of kind of what we're looking to do, if y'all like to see that.
Thank you.
But the one pond is already built, and the two in the back, those may or may not happen, but the one's we already built that one, it's there. We have a common area on that pond. It's right down the road where we have the covered bridge at. We built the covered bridge and put up all the wooden fence up and down Highway 47 right there. And we'll just have a road that goes in there, and also have access off the back on Lakewood Road. So, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so I'm assuming you're in favor of this.
I am.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak in favor of the proposed zoning, rezoning and pre-zoning? Okay, would anyone like to speak against the rezoning and zoning and the pre-zoning request? Okay. So if there's anyone else speaking for or against, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the hearing has been adjourned, and I'm gonna reconvene the regular council meeting. So now, we get into the good stuff. So this is an amendment to our zoning ordinance. This says that we're gonna rezone and pre-zone that property from pre-zone what's no zone to A1 and then rezone the property that's already in the city limits. So, just going by through all the whereases and whatnot, this property is located in the vicinity of Highway 47 North and Lakewood Drive. Also, Weaver Creek Road, I think, is in the area there across from it, so I think that's the name of Weaver Creek. They have had a public hearing before the Planning Commission, and they requested that, at the request of the property owner, and they've requested that the council consider this ordinance for the parcel to be rezoned from no zoning to A1, certain conditions. We just held our public hearing, and so upon adoption of this ordinance, it will be ordained that the mayor and the council of the city of Columbiana will rezone the district boundaries and as we discussed on the previous charts, from no zoning to A1, those are the tax parcels that I tried to read to you a few minutes ago. And obviously it assumes compliance with all of our zoning rules, regulations, policies, and ordinance. And then the clerk will publish the ordinance as required by law. So if there's not any other questions, is there a motion to introduce the ordinance?
I'd like to introduce ordinance 41025 to rezone and pre-zone property number zoning, or no zoning to A1.
Is there a second?
No.
So, all in favor of the ordinance 041025 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Okay, the ordinance has been adopted. Okay, this one deals with the annexation of the property that we discussed on the map that was outside the city boundaries, the crosshatch that we saw, and you have copies of this map. So are there any questions about this particular property? So if not, is there would someone like to introduce the ordinance for consideration?
I'd like to introduce ordinance 062501, annexation of property at Highway 47 North and Lakewood Drive.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor of the annexation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and the property is now annexed, and we can rezone it. So, all right, this is the 40-page ordinance that the judge was talking about that deals with the adoption of the motor carrier safety regulations. So what, I am not going to read all this. I'm going to go through, I tried to highlight some stuff. So if any of these motor carrier ordinances or laws that are declared by the state of Alabama are violated within the corporate limits of Columbiana or the police jurisdiction, then whoever violates it shall be guilty of an offense against the city of Columbiana. In other words, our officers who have now been trained could issue the appropriate citations. So that's if they have violated any of the associated state laws associated with this. So if anybody commits an offense which is a violation of the federal motor carrier regulations within the city limits of Columbiana or police jurisdiction, then they shall be guilty of an offense and can be cited. And should those not be in state law, then if they commit an offense within the corporate limits of the city of Columbiana and they violate any of these safety regulations that are defined by the Code of Federal Regulations Title 49, even though it's not declared by local or state law, we're basically adopting that, so they shall be guilty of an offense and can be cited. So that's basically what this ordinance goes through. There's a lot of stuff here about details about getting minimum fines, maximum fines, court costs. And then the most important, or the lengthiest part here, which I won't read, is in order to make this ordinance valid, we have to publish within the ordinance what the fines and costs are associated if a truck driver should violate this, or anybody should violate. The regulations could also apply to owners of the trucks as well as the operators. So there's a whole list of them here. Boom, boom, boom. I don't know why some of them turned out blue and some of them turned out gray, but anyway, that is all of the different things that they could be cited for and what the fine is for the appropriate offense. Then also, this is cleanup stuff if they don't come to court. It can increase the fine. We haven't adopted, but if there had been one which was in conflict, it's repealed. And if it's held unconstitutional, then this ordinance would stay, if any part of it should be held unconstitutional, this ordinance shall stay in force notwithstanding such effect. Any questions on this? And I think the judge explained the logic behind why we need to do this. So, okay, would someone like to introduce the ordinance?
I can introduce ordinance 06-2502, adoption of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations CMR 49.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the ordinance passes. Okay. We've talked about this in prior council meetings about, we went through a condemnation process or initiated one. We didn't actually go through with it. To get a stormwater drainage easement for a stormwater drainage improvement project we have in the city. The property owner decided to accept the offer of the city of Columbiana, which is that we would basically pay $4,000 for the easement. And so what this does is basically, now that we're going to go through that process to pay the owner for the easement. It's a judgment of the City Council and the City of Columbiana that's in the public interest and necessary and expedient to do this. We talked about that at previous council meetings. And this is basically the legal description of the easement. I'll show you Exhibit A in a minute, and this is all just sort of cleanup language right here. But basically, if you recall, it was 4/100ths of an acre in a ditch. And we are replacing the culvert on Depot Street, and we need a little bit of an easement in that ditch. And so there's a permanent easement, and then there's a small temporary construction easement that goes along with that. Any questions? Okay, go back to the resolution. So is there a motion to adopt the resolution to accept the easement?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 06-2503, authorizing acceptance of a stormwater drainage easement.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the resolution passes. Okay, so this is a resolution to accept the award of a supplemental loan from ADEM to help us complete the sewer improvement project. The loan's in the amount of $4,475,000. It's a state revolving fund loan. Before we do that, I kind of want to go through some data here so you understand. what the loan is and how it's gonna be paid back. Well, to start with, this is what our existing debt service already is. So up until December of last year, we had basically these general obligation warrants and this revenue bond right here, and our debt service on those totaled about $793,000. This adds up, by the way, to $791 instead of $793 and some change. And the reason is these numbers came off of the amortization schedule, and those vary a little bit from time to time because of the timing of assessment and payment of interest and things of that nature. So this adds up to $791, but what we actually are paying this year is about $793 and some change. But we adopted a similar resolution and an ordinance to accept the SRF loan in the amount of $2,775,000 at 1.99%. And the debt service for that added $153,963 this year. And that was in February, we had an interest payment, and then in August, we had a principal and interest payment. And that's the way that continued to work. You principal, interest only in February, and principal and interest in August. So our total debt service for this year has jumped up to $945. This $153.9, call it $154. We did not budget for that this year. We talked about it in the budgeting process, but at the time we were adopting the budget, we didn't have any of the details about this loan, so we were basically absorbing that, if you will. And I think we're going to be fine based on some of the preliminary data I've seen going into the end of the fiscal year. I apologize, there's a lot of numbers here and a lot of data, but I'm going to try to make this as simple as I can. So the sewer project, the total estimated cost is $15.1 million. And the elements of that is for utility engineering company, they're doing the engineering and project management, $531,000. Some of the environmental services work is done by Geotech, $128,000. But the biggie, and I spelled Apple wrong, Mr. Apple spells his name with one P, is the $14.5 million for the construction of it. We had a little over $5.5 million of funding. We asked ADEM for some supplemental SRF funding. At this point in time, they've given us the basically $4.5 million. They've approved that, and that's from fiscal year 24 funds that they have in the state revolving fund. And there is an application to be considered right now to give us the additional $5.1 million that we will need to complete this thing out. So right now, if we financed through the SRF, not 15 million because we had 2.8 million in a grant, but the rest of it, if we finance the rest of it using SRF, our sewer average debt over 20 years would be $757,000. That's the debt service, excuse me. The debt service, as I mentioned before, if you exclude the sewer payment right now in fiscal year 25 is 791, actually 93 because this comes off the amortization schedule. And it goes up to 945 this year for the debt service payment in fiscal year 25 of 153,000. Because of when we closed this loan and when payments were due, it wasn't a full year. We don't have a full cycle. That 153 for this year is low. The average annual debt service for that $2.775 million is about $169,000. This supplemental is $4.5 million, and this is approximate, but it's pretty close. This is just from a loan amortization calculator, and I did that before we did all the other loans, and it came out pretty close. So it'll be another $274,000 in debt service. That'll leave $5.1 million, and if we go SRF again at 1.99, that would be about 314 in annual debt service. So total annual debt service just for the SRF loans would be $757,000. And I bring that up because if you go back to the previous chart, that pretty much doubles what our existing debt was before we undertook the sewer project. Okay, so the total estimated debt service in fiscal year 26 would be 1.6 million if we round that up. That equals 25% of recurring taxes and fees in our current budget. I mention that because one of the benchmarks that some people use, a rule of thumb maybe would be a better way to say it, of how much debt is too much debt. And the recommendation is don't get more than 15% of your recurring taxes and fees. This is going to make ours at 25%, assuming nothing changes. So the sewer debt service requirement, though, even though it says 757,000, is 833 because ADEM requires that you demonstrate that you have the ability to pay 110% of the debt service on the loan. It's basically just a little insurance, I guess, on their part. The first loan, this one right here, the 2.7, we funded it with a limited revenue obligation warrant, and what we did is we obligated our revenue from our sewer fees. Ideally, the sewer fund should be self-sustaining, and so that's what we did. But if we need this much, and in this fiscal year, unless this increases, our surplus that we have available from sewer fees is $549,000. We have a shortage of $284,000 that we have to make up to be able to fund all the debt for this. By the way, 2 investment bankers have been analyzing our data and looking at some commercial bonds to municipal bonds to in some creative ways to lower the debt service. It won't make the debt overall cheaper, but on the front end it can potentially substantially reduce the debt service payments, which is something they're going to present to us. One of the investment bankers will be coming Thursday, even though it's holiday for us, to present something that he's put together. Some of you who are big Alabama fans will know Mr. Walter Lewis. He was the last quarterback under Bear Bryant at Alabama, so Walter's going to come and present that to you on Thursday. So anyway, so what are our options? Basically, what we can do, and this isn't my latest version of this, but anyway, the options that we have to be able to come up with that shortfall is to obviously reduce, one of them is to reduce expenses. Now that might mean that we would have to cut back on services, we might have to cut back on appropriations for various things that the city wants and expects to reduce those expenses. Personnel costs, that's difficult because we always seem to be shorthanded, and part of the reasons we're shorthanded is because there's a consensus that our salaries aren't necessarily competitive, so personnel costs would be challenging as far as when we do it. The other way is to increase revenues, and obviously how do we do that? Well, one of them, in addition to taxes, is fees. Fees like sewer fees, garbage fees. We increased our sewer fee this year by 10%, and we were still left a little bit short. Ad valorem taxes, I think we have reached the maximum that as a city that we are allowed to charge for ad valorem taxes without a referendum. So good luck getting folks to vote an increase in their property taxes. I don't think that's going to And then the other thing would be to increase sales tax. We don't need to consider any of those things today. I just want everybody to be thinking about it. We've got the budgeting process kicking off for fiscal year '26, but we need to be thinking about how we're gonna deal with the financing. And again, maybe the investment bankers will come to us with some magical financing options that will help us out so that we don't have to deal with tax increases. So, a lot of numbers, I know. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. So, all this does is the council's saying, yes, let's go to ADEM and ask them to put together a loan package for this $4.475 million loan at 1.99% for 20 years. We'll get that. We'll get the amortization schedule. We'll work with our own bond attorney as well as their bond attorney and determine whether or not we want to do another revenue obligation warrant or if we want to do a general obligation warrant. And then it'll come back before the city like it did the last time before we actually execute the loan agreement. So this one's just the go-ahead to tell ADEM, yep, we want it. They gave us, and I think it's in your package, they did give us a letter saying that they had approved it. There was two of them. It's actually two separate funding letters. And my guess is they have money, ADEM has money that it gets in, puts in the state revolving fund from a variety of sources. There's money in there from the ARPA, from the last administration. There's also money in there from the bipartisan infrastructure law. And the reason I think we got the two letters, and I'm only speculating, is that the money came out of two different buckets. So it totals up to $4.475 million. Questions? Okay, would someone like to introduce a resolution?
I make the motion to introduce resolution 062504, accepting the award of a supplemental loan for ADEM.
Second.
Okay, this one's money, so let's do a roll call on this one.
Councilmember Lilly,
Yes.
Mizell. King,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
Yes. Okay, got that out of the way. The only thing that I think that we need to discuss, unless somebody else has something, is that our next council meeting is normally scheduled, or regular council meeting should be July the 1st. That's obviously the July the 4th week, and we have a lot of people who are gonna be out and traveling. And so, there was a suggestion that we rescheduled the July 1st meeting to July the 8th, and then our second regularly scheduled council meeting for July would be the next week. Any discussion on this? Generally in favor of rescheduling to July the 8th?
Sure, that's fine.
That.
All right, so that's what we plan we'll do, and we'll make that announcement appropriately. We might want to go ahead and put something out, because I know people are clamoring to get to our July 1 meeting. So. Any other city business anybody needs to bring up? Okay. I didn't have anything to talk about this week, can you believe that? Except
No.
the SRF financing, and I think I did it. Talk to my share. All right, announcements?
Let's make a note of that.
All right, so this Friday night is the Goat Hill String Band for Sunset Music and Market. And then on Saturday is the Columbiana Cleanup Day that starts at 7:30 in the morning. Hopefully everybody will come and help. Then the 27th and the 28th is Liberty Day and lots of fun things. So it's been a fun summer so far.
And we'll take an hour of anybody's time to clean up. An hour would be wonderful.
What is that, when is that?
This Saturday.
This Saturday?
And you don't have to come at 7:30. You can come at 8. You can come at 9. We're gonna hopefully be through by 11 or 12, but the more people that come, the faster we'll finish.
All right. Any other questions for Alan? Any comments from the public? Anybody? All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.